There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Shaker table using just a box fan. I broke 2 of the blades off, glued a piece of plexiglass on top, and then glued these little rubber feet to allow it to vibrate. And so I'm going to see if this works as a class demo to show liquefaction.
today I just want to point out some older buildings and how the ground level is just really out of whack with them. And it's my belief that there was actually a cataclysm, maybe even a series of cataclysms in the 1600s that, as one of the side effects, it deposited just layers and layers of mud, dirt, earth, and it engulfed these buildings. And then we've been digging them out or destroying them altogether. So I just wanted to point out, this is the old Boston State House. And as you can see, there's probably a whole other floor here, but it's underneath the ground. And you can see here these windows getting tinier and tinier, and you have an entrance going into the second floor. And this is pretty common with these buildings that we're going to be looking at. But I don't think this building was designed like this. This building was built, and then this event happened, and then people just kind of refitted these buildings, and then we've been given false dates for these buildings, is also my belief.
Yeah, just when you think you understand what's going on, you realize you really don't. You know, mud floods, I mean, one of the most fascinating, interesting topics I've come across other than the globe deception. You know, I gotta say, I realize now that the people in power, they lied about our history. They lied about everything. They lied about who we are, where we're from. They're lying about what this place is. They even are lying about how this place works. There's overwhelming evidence that our ancient ancestors was far more advanced than academia is claiming them to be. The architecture alone proves that there was a worldwide civilization that was in sync with one another. I think they were more far advanced than we were today. In the 19th century, there was a massive reconstruction going on all over the world from a cataclysm that happened sometime in the 17th century. Are we the survivors of a worldwide event that took out majority of the world's population? Did the controllers of this world go underground and come back up after this event? Was it a reset? That's the question. And if so, how many resets there have been? One could argue there's a lot of clues all over the world to show that this is the case. We just re-engineered the technology that was left behind. There's an old saying, there's nothing new under the sun. So I guess what I'm trying to do here is to connect some dots. I'm trying to figure out what happened about this ancient civilization.
And Fifth Avenue mansions. So when I was kind of doing some research for one of my videos about a church in Omaha, Nebraska, that appeared to have showed signs of the mud flood, I found another slide where this building was, it's completely encased in mud as well. And this street is, when you look at these mud flood buildings, typically the streets themselves are mud in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And look at this right here, all this earth. It goes right up to the roof, basically, of this building. But this kind of just, I've heard other researchers talking about this, but I just want to do a quick video kind of reinforcing that you'll usually see these two things together, which makes sense. So there's a pretty cool little image here. In Vicksburg, Mississippi, 1906, the Carroll Hotel. So if you take a look at this building, it's got this, this certain type of architecture, and you can see here that the stairways going up to possibly the second floor. I don't know, there might actually be another 2 floors below, but it's going up, and you can see all these windows are just trailing off. But you can see, the roads are completely, they're just in horrible shape, but they do have tracks laid down. And but yeah, the building itself, of course, you got the antenna there. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful building, and they should be capable of throwing down some brick, but for the roads. But you could tell that this event happened, and they're still recovering, basically. So I think that one's a pretty good example right there.
From continent to continent, a lot of these ruins were just barely poking up, and to this day, if we look around, there's still unexcavated sites with no real urgency to excavate. They're everywhere, and little things poking out here and there, and nobody really explores. Every once in a while, a farmer stumbles across something and unearths it, and it might make national news and then just go away. But besides that, there's no rush, it seems. Most of the old unearthings were done 100 years ago. When it comes to the mud flood subject, I think people are hitting it right on the head, and the message is loud and clear, and what I'm really concerned about, and especially this really hit me when I started considering the cosmology issue, and if we weren't spinning at 1,500 miles an hour, then what are we? Is there really a dome? What kind of dome is this? And historically in the Bible and different things, waters came from the heavens, and in other lore we hear of a crack in the Milky Way, which that's what we're actually seeing, and that's where the waters came from and overtook the earth. So when I think about mud floods, I mean, I'm thinking about something like you need to be able to guide and direct this kind of energy. I mean, we're not talking about just opening up a spigot, or are we? Are we talking about just opening up a spigot, but on a grander level? I mean, I suppose there's other ways. If you were in control of this realm, then you would have technologies that we're completely unaware of. And so, yeah, when it comes to the mud flood, I mean, what do? You really have to pour water from above, literally. And so, for me, the great question right now is not, was there a mud flood? Absolutely, there was a mud flood. But my question is how, and can we see evidence of how? And a lot of people are doing great research on geography and where you'll have mountains above the towns and cities that have been mud flooded. But there are some examples where that doesn't fit the case, where you'll have no mountains around and you'll still have a mud flood just appear. And even where I live, I mean, there's areas all over the place. And I've seen this all throughout the Four Corners region as well, all throughout. You have signs of mud flood in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, as if there's still things under there, as if something had just dumped mud from right on top and completely covered what lay underneath. And I'm so tempted. Of course I can't just go digging at things, and I don't even have heavy machinery, but I feel like we're entitled to know what's under a lot of these things. But in any case, yes, that disproves the whole having a mountain right next to it, because they don't necessarily have to have mountains next to them. And even in South America, some of the pyramids that we saw were completely buried in mud when they first discovered them, and yet there was no mud anywhere else. Many, many examples of such things. So yeah, I mean, strangely, I feel as if there must be keepers of some sort, and really we can't look to science for this. I think the best chance we have to understand who, again, may control this realm, besides going as high as a higher power, I mean like the highest of high, but something that, would have to control waters, for example, and mud, and make decisions on why to reset civilizations, and really just maybe the mud is actually just to cover up the bodies. I don't know. When we look in the 1800s, the early 1800s photos, more specifically 1850s, give or take 10 years, but we see the vacancy of people in the streets and mud. Could this be a mass burial in order to reintroduce a new wave of people? And what is this? Could this be some kind of experiment? And, I feel blessed to actually be even talking about this, and others making videos on this subject, and even be part of this conversation, because this is the real conversation. It's not, yeah, we live in a paradigm where we have to run around and make money and have jobs one way or another, but that's not what's really going on. And if you're listening to this video, then you are not just about that. You are about knowing the truth, and it's really the greatest thing worth pursuing, I think. Where are we really? I mean, we know what's a lie. We know the lies we've been fed. It seems that that's clear now. It seems that that's all we've had is a lie. And what a great idea on their part, feed us a lie at an early age, and give us an occupation to preoccupy us, and let the experiment go on. But once again, I feel blessed to be able to speak about this, and blessed to know that there's a community of us out there that are concerned about this issue, and I hope, and I feel as if, we get closer and closer. I mean, we're moving forward. So.
Yeah, how many resets? Culture layering. How many resets were there? I'm just amazed at 43 years old. I'm just now finding out about liquefaction. Mud flow, mud floods. Why haven't we been told about this phenomenon? If they're just turning to quicksand, mud, I don't know about you, But I want to know about that. What's that's all about? I mean, it's obvious that they're hiding this untold story. This untold story has many more pieces of the puzzle to it, and they don't want us to know about it. For an example, like ancient history, ancient technology that the ancients were using, like the fasces, some type of energy weapon that was supposedly creating a frequency that could change the ground like cymatic patterns. What's the reason? Is that the reason for the star forts? I mean, come on. Star forts that's all over the world to protect them from this type of technology. It's kind of like sound wave effect. I don't know. I'm still looking into this. My question is, what's going on underground? Because I'm thinking two things. If underground is the only way to protect ourselves from this type of event, or is that what they're doing underground? Is that what's causing this events on the surface? I mean, who knows? I mean, we know they have, the governments of the world have underground cities, domes, How often was these resets? Ghost cities, buildings, towns that people just abandoned and left. Look, everywhere in the world in the 19th century, people just digging out of the mud. Just mud all over the place. They would have us believe that it was the age of construction, but it was the age of reconstruction, the age of rebuilding. My first dive into this research, mud flood research, I started looking at all the old photos from antiquity and all the old photos and pictures starting in the 1700s, then the 1800s, then the 1900s. I started to look at for a different story, with a different mindset now. I observed the pictures in ways I've never done before. Like, who built these architecture, these buildings? Who was the designers? And why this type of architecture is all over the world? Japan, to the far corners of Africa. They call it the colonial style, these Greek columns. And now I guess the appropriate word would be like the federal architecture. Was this a 3D imprint? With these buildings here? Who put them here? Why does these houses and buildings have antennas in this time frame? Why there's street lamps and telephone poles, some with wires, some without any wires? What's going on here? The definition of suffocation, the state or process of dying from being deprived of air or unable to breathe. Asphyxiation, the state or process of being deprived of oxygen, which can result in unconsciousness or death. Suffocation. When you got tons of mud, and mud turns into liquid that's getting it everywhere, and that process of death is horrifying. There's a million ways to die. That's one of them. That's one way I wouldn't want to, go, or see anybody go that way. Yeah, some of this information, I'm going to put the links in the description. Some of these channels that you have to subscribe to and you have to follow, man. New Earth breaks it down, all the architecture, all the past. Very great channel. Wise Up exposes the archaeology fraud. Shout out to Wise Up, one of my favorite YouTube channels. Mudflow, Philip Dresden from Russia. Shout out to him. Conspiracies Are Us, Flat Earth, British. definitely check him out. He goes into the architecture about these cathedrals, and he breaks it down. Rebel Without a Pause and John Levi, man. This is where I got a lot of the information from in this timeline. Shout out to those guys. The links, like I said, will be in the description so that you could start your own research and actually look and follow what's going on. It's an obvious cover up. It's like the flat Earth. It's obvious it's flat. It's obvious that they've been lying about what this place is. But the rabbit hole gets deeper, folks. It gets real deeper.
They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them.
The problem I have, it's this. It's that we can look up historical images and we can find pictures of many American cities that are bombed out and mud flooded and crumbled and they're in ruins. That we can see, and that's very evident, and that information is not hard to seek out and come across. However, if we are looking for an explanation or a historical narrative that is going to explain to us how these events took place 200 years ago, then we are at a loss. Nothing will ever explicitly mention the mud flood. And yet, by looking at old photographs, we know what happened. So, what I'm attempting to do is read between the lines. I'm attempting to see a story within a story. I want to see the true story hidden within the official history. I think this is possible. And just very briefly, we do have an official explanation for this historical destruction and maybe even mud flood. And in one word, that explanation is the U.S. Civil War, right? Which happened from don't quote me, but 1861 to 1865. Maybe a little before. And if we look at a battle map of where all these U.S. Civil War battles took place, then we have a pretty valid reason as to how all these old American cities got destroyed. It seems that Virginia, West Virginia, has some of the most evident examples of destroyed cities and ruins. And I think a lot of battles took place there. However, if we look at places like Boston or New York and Philadelphia, I haven't found too many old destruction pictures from Philadelphia, but if you look at Boston or Chicago, during the 1871 fire, you'll find lots of images of destruction. Even in places like Wallace, Idaho, and areas of Montana, there was a historic forest fire in 1910 which ravaged and destroyed cities. We see similar type of destruction even happening in this later time. And just even more briefly, the Chicago fire of 1871. New York had some great fires in 1830s and 1840s. Sorry, I'm just going by memory here. And if you look at Philadelphia, apparently Philadelphia had mob riots in the 1840s. 1844, I think, was the year. So if you look into the history of most major North American cities, there is likely somewhere in the history where it has evidence of destruction or rioting. Toronto, Ontario, in 1904, supposedly there was a fire that destroyed much of Toronto. So my point is that a lot of these old North American cities have been destroyed at some point in the past, and the official explanation is either civil war or great fires and destruction.
I'm thinking the giants, the 20-foot, 25, 26-foot giants that we probably coexisted with before in the past, built these structures, some of these structures as well. You know, how many resets has happened? You know, and this type of architecture. It's all over the world. Our ancestors left clues behind, and we have to literally dig through the lies to uncover the truth. I'm convinced now that natural disasters aren't so natural. I mean, you have to have an imagination and an open mind to begin to even understand what's going on and what this place is. there's definitely something to this. You know, you can go where you live and find evidence of a mud flood event that happened in the past. Learn what to look for when you're looking at these ancient architecture. You know, like the gargoyles and these weird creatures on these statues of antiquity. No one seems to, know who actually built these structures. And a lot of them lead to dead ends. You know, look, it's just obvious. It's just under mud. It's something that wasn't built that way. And they just build steps. They got these bricks. And it's overwhelming evidence of this. All over. You got these Wi-Fi antennas. Look at the time frames, when stuff was made, who invented what. They built a whole paradigm.
Late 1800s, Fifth Avenue, New York City mansions. And you've got this similar architecture, and you can see the first floors here are they're buried, but they actually have paved streets here. And there's just, look at this architecture. It's unreal. Okay, so here's another little mansion here. You have the stairways going up to this second floor here. This floor is underneath the street level, and you can see these antennas all over there. They're faded out, but again, you have another Vanderbilt. Okay, you have another mansion, and again, the stairs going up to this level, and there's a whole level that's buried. I mean, just look at this architecture. It's it's unbelievable. You can't quite tell here, but there's a couple more examples I want to show you. But just once you start seeing all these towers, it's just you see them pop up everywhere. What else do we got here? Okay, this is a good example. Photos from 1891. Perfect example here. Stairs going up to this level, and you have this whole level buried. And again, stairs going up to this level. This entire level is buried, this entire floor is buried. So I think that's about it. But so even, it's everywhere. At this point, I feel like we're all starting to catch on to this.
Did you know that Tartaria was one of the biggest empires in the world at one time? The Tartarian Empire. Completely erased from our history. A big effort right now is going on to uncover the truth about that cover-up. We are literally watching them erase history. They've been doing this for a long time now. History is a bunch of lies agreed upon by the winners of war. All of the ancient maps show ancient lands that mysteriously disappeared off the maps. Was that another reason why, they gave us the globe? To hide these ancient lands? Are we being quarantined by these ancient civilizations that control this world? They could just bury us underground with mud floods, start a new reset, and say anything they want. There's mud flood evidence in all the old photos and paintings of antiquity. And all the mud flood evidence in the paintings in the 19th century. Floor levels underground. They just built over top of the existing structures. There's nowhere to put all that earth at. Porcelain toilets, plumbing, electrical devices, antennas on roofs of buildings, rebar structures on the inside of concrete structures. It's evidence of advanced civilization in the past. I want to know who they are, so I can find out who I am and where we came from.
Also, part number 1 is going to be consistent the archaeology, so-called footage of the objects that was done in 19th century. So this is just the beginning of 20th century and the end of 19th century. All this footage was done in archaeological site missions, so they are pretty much original and decent enough to make a review on them. Okay. Also, we have maybe some quotations of or reference to some archaeological reports that were done in the beginning of 20th century, and where we can find the evidence that some of the bodies that were found during the archaeological missions were actually not the burial sites, but possibly the people that were caught in the mud flow, and maybe like a group of people, and they couldn't have exited the mud flow and escaped the death, therefore. So this is pretty nice, I'd say pretty nice, although it's very awful occasions that were worldwide, and probably that's why we see so many art objects that say that most of the ruins were covered with the mud, and we also see art sculptures like the one I'm showing in Moscow with the swimmer, so-called swimmer, where a bunch of people stuck in the mud and like dying there. And more evidence of that is for sure in internet, where we see cars get stuck in the mud, people get stuck in the mud. So this is the whole line of the proof that people can get stuck in the mud and therefore could be found in archaeological missions just like laying in the mud. And that doesn't mean that they are older than something, like they calculate through the cultural layer depth and place those people like, hundreds of years before that. But they could be just, the 19th century people, 19th century folks that could be caught in the mud flow and eventually be dead like that. So this is also the part of 2, and maybe the third part we're gonna be bringing the best footage that we could get on Moscow, on the surrounding areas in Russia, maybe some towns of Russia, which also proves something like we can bring some information on Star Forts as a worldwide architectural style, and also pull it tighter to Russia as the possible last part of the empire, which was called the Grand Tartaria. That's why we need more footage on griffons worldwide, and if you guys can send me any griffons in your areas that pictures on the buildings, that could also bring more information on how wide the griffon culture was spread before the mud flood. And also the griffons are well-known guards of Great Tartaria, so that kind of proves that all those areas were in one union, cultural union, as I've been calling it before, the cultural view on Atlantis, and it has many names. One of the names was, one of the last names was Hansa Union, which was on the ruins of the Atlantis, and was kind of trading with all these nations that were left after the breaking of the Union and the empire itself. So this is kind of proves us that this part kind of proves us that we have much evidence in Russia that Russia is connected to Great Tartary, and the Great Tartary itself could be spread at least in Europe and many more cities. So that kind of proves that probably Great Tartaria was also in North America, as they say, and that's why only in 17th century, after the fall of Great Tartaria, the expansion of all these frontiers that were unopened before. So and probably this also can bring us to more ideas on North America itself, why it's so different in comparison to Mexico and the South America, because it was a territory of the empire that was existing until the 19th century, until the 18th and 19th century. So that kind of proves us, and that brings more logic to this frontier expansion that was performed. So this is probably the structure of the film, because you cannot, cover all this stuff in one film. So if this film does good and gets more views than I expect, because I see people are interested in this New Earth research and something like this, but this is more like actual, because what is gonna be proven in this film is the new line of how it was, because we have many authors that say yes, it was BS, or like BS history and stuff like this, but they don't tell us what it really was. So I hope this film will give us information, at least how it really was before, and how it was, ended up in the mud. So I hope you like this resume, and I won't forget anything that I was planning to do. And that's why I was recording this, and also for you to show you, for me to show you these pictures, and inspire people to send me more footage on Griffones and evidence. Yes, of course, those who are already researching in their own channels, like Mudflood, Rebel Without Union, I don't have much time to contact you personally, guys, but if you hear me, if you can send me any footage, and I'll brand you as a footage sent by your channels, and of course you'll be mentioned in this research, because I don't want to pull it up completely to one channel. Everybody who does the research can also be uploading the parts of the videos with their, or something like this, so with their comments and stuff like this, so they can also comment on the video, because it won't be it can be not monetized, because not monetized videos don't get into the recommended. They get very little percentage of the views of potential viewers. So we're gonna put all these monetization efforts to monetize this video as much as possible, for people not to escape it. So I'm gonna be putting 3 ads in this 25-minute video. So I hope YouTube will like it, and if people watch it, it will bring it to the bigger audiences and provide it as a recommended video. So I hope nobody will be pissed off of 3 ads in the video, but we have to do it because it's a real way to increase the views. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you later. Bye.
Seattle, Washington. A lot of evidence of underground cities under mud. They have an underground tour you can actually go to. Shout out to my man D Marble out there. I think he's going to put something together for the folks. Yeah, man, it's just overwhelming. I mean, it's underground. I mean, you can just kind of get a picture. There's also a lot of photos about Seattle and that region, Canada region, under mud as well. And when you really think about it, it is the Twilight Zone. You know? Like, what the hell is going on with reality? Yeah, there's also a lot of evidence pointing that we are the survivors of this worldwide cataclysm that wiped out, majority of the world. There's also this thing about the fondlings, the orphans. There were just so many orphans, so many orphan children for a long time. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, and let's try to find out what they are to complete this picture. Thanks for watching, and subscribe, share, spread the awareness about the mud floods.